Hello there, it's Dad again, and I'm going through the Dad, I Want to Hear Your Story book, part two. So I'm going to pick up where I left off, and it's still the topic is it's your birthday, so things about the day that you were born. Some of the questions leading up to that I answered in the first video, so I'm not going to go through those. But there were some that I didn't touch on, so I'm just going to keep going. What the question here was, how old were your parents when you were born? So I looked up my parents' birth date. My dad was born on my birthday. I'm sure you all know that. And he was 26 years old when I was born. And my mom was 22. 22 years old. Dad was 26 the day I was born. So pretty young. What stories have you been told about the day you were born? So I'm sure my mom has told me stories about the day or the leading up to. I don't remember any of them. So if there was anything significant that happened in their lives the day I was born, I don't remember them. I don't know. Next question. What is a favorite childhood memory? And I actually filled out multiple childhood memories here just off the top of my head. I'm sure I could come up with more, but figured I'd just go through a few. Falling asleep in swing. So, from the time that I was born up into New Hampshire, oh, no, from the time I was born until I was almost 5, we lived on what's called New Hampshire Street in Newton, New Jersey. And I remember we had this swing that sat out in the yard, and it was a literally a baby swing that I used to cram my body into, and I would just fall asleep. My mom has tons of pictures of me all cramped up in this swing falling asleep, and I just have memories of always falling asleep in that swing when I was a kid. Playing with my dad's wagon that he used to use was when he was a kid. So I actually Googled this. If it was called a Radio Flyer Town and Country, it was a red wagon. It had red sides with it wasn't a like a radio flyer, but the traditional radio flyer was just a metal wagon. This was a metal wagon, but it had wooden sides all around. And me and my sisters used to sit in this wagon and had a metal handle that normally somebody would pull. But if you wanted to drive it, you could sit in the front and bring the handle up. And if you just kind of did this, it would turn. And me and my sisters used to play racing down the driveway in this wagon. And if you turn that handle too fast, you'd go flying and crash into the driveway. And I always have memories of playing with that wagon in the driveway with my sisters. Climbing trees in the neighborhood. I don't know if kids today climb trees, but man, let me tell you, when I was a kid and in Newton, there were always enough trees to climb. There was when you went down the driveway on the left hand side, there was a big, I don't know if it's a maple tree, an elm tree, whatever kind of tree it was. Love climbing that. And then in the backyard of our house, we had 2 pine trees, and pine trees are easy to climb because the branches are low and they're spaced apart. I can't tell you how many times I have climbed up and down that tree and different trees in the neighborhood. I always have memories of climbing trees. Eating blackberries on the way home from school. So just kind of a trivial thing. I love blackberries. Had a blackberry bush at our old house. And when I was in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, walking home from Halsted Street School and right on the corner of, I think it was like Spring Street or whatever the street was. It was before I got to my house. On the corner, there was these big blackberry bushes, and they were huge. And I would stop there every day on my way home and pick blackberries and eat them. And I remember my mother telling me, don't eat the blackberries. I don't know why. Maybe she didn't. I don't know why she didn't want me eating them, but she didn't want me eating them. And I, of course, didn't listen, and I would eat them anyway. And I remember one time I walked in the house and she goes, "Did you stop and eat the blackberries?" And I'm like, "No." And of course, I had blackberry juice all around my mouth. And she got mad and she sent me to my room. And the priest, Father Mike, no, it wasn't Father Mike. It was Father Patty. He was Irish guy, and I remember him coming up to my room and trying to console me because I was so upset that I got sent to my room for eating blackberries that I wasn't supposed to eat. So that was an interesting memory. Catching fireflies. It's summertime. Growing up as a kid, summers were obviously great. And I just remember at night running around in the yard, bare feet, catching fireflies. And my sisters and I would have like a jar, and you'd catch fireflies in your hand and try and get them in the jar. I don't even know if kids today do that, but I just have fond memories of catching fireflies when I was a kid. Making ramps and jumping our bikes. I'm surprised I'm alive today with the stuff that we did. We used to make we used to get wood from the basement and cinder blocks, and we'd make ramps, and we'd ride down the street in front of the house and hit this ramp and go flying. One time we used an old door that we found. We made ramps. We used to actually get the kids in the neighborhood, and everybody'd lie down on the ground, and the ramp would be right there, and you'd be like this, and there'd be 3 or 4 of us all lining up, and you'd race down with your bike and hit that ramp, go flying in the air, and literally jump over everybody. That was fun, right? Because you never thought that you might hit the person on the end. Thought never occurred to us. And for the person that did lay on the ground, somebody in the neighborhood had a pair of football pads, for playing football. So they would lay on the ground and they'd just put the football pads over top of them, and that was going to protect them in case you didn't quite clear them. And I can't tell you how many times I've gone butt over handlebars, flying in the air. The bike goes down like this, the front wheel hits the ground, and I'd go toppling over top of the handlebars. I'm really surprised I'm alive today. And making a kite with my dad in Cub Scouts. So here's a great childhood story. I don't know how old I was, but I know I was in Cub Scouts. So grammar school, elementary school sometime. And there was a competition for making for kites. I don't know if you necessarily had to build a kite, but I know you had to fly it. So, of course, my dad was like, "We're not buying a kite, we're making one." So what does Dad do? He gets the World Book encyclopedias out, because my parents owned the World Book Encyclopedia. And he pulls the encyclopedia and kites. "Oh, look, here's how you can make a kite." And, of course, my dad never throws anything away. So down in the basement, he finds, these long pieces of wood. They were probably 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch thin pieces of wood, like almost like a stick. A couple of those that were long, some heavy cord, and we made a traditional triangle looking kite. The whole bit. I mean, bending the wood, it was bowed and it was long, and to cover it, we used. It was like a crepe paper. It was a thick crepe paper that you would use to, I don't know, make for parties or whatever. And I wind up gluing this crepe paper on it. And we had a string with like tied up paper. I think it was newspaper, like a little bows along the string on the tail. And we went to Don Bosco College, which was a seminary type college in Newton. It is now Sussex County Community College, but back then it was called Don Bosco, and they had this huge athletic field, and that's where the kite flying competition was going to be. So I got out there with my homemade kite, and of course everybody's kind of making fun of me because, oh, that kite's not going to fly. It's going to rip. That crepe paper is going to rip. And my dad's like, "Don't worry about it. It's going to be fine." And sure enough, windy day, that kite takes off, and I won the competition. I flew that kite the highest of anybody else. So I win, right? Win the kite flying competition. So that was a great memory from my childhood. Okay, moving on. Here we go. Google the following for the year you were born. What are some notable events that occurred? So I went ahead and Googled what are some notable events in 1967. So 1967 was a year marked by significant global events, technological advancements, and social movements. So you can do this same thing, but let me see. Major conflicts included the Six-Day War in the Middle East. So when you hear about what's going on in Israel and Hamas and Gaza and all of that stuff, that conflict goes back to 1967, even before. So this is not like a new thing that's going on. This has been around for a very long time. Thurgood Marshall was confirmed as the first African American Supreme Court justice on October 7, 1967. Carl Stokes became the first African American mayor of a major U.S. city when he was elected mayor of Cleveland. And the landmark Supreme Court case Loving versus Virginia was declared which declared that state laws prohibiting interracial marriage was unconstitutional, and that was decided in June 1967. So you imagine today you marry whoever you want, irregardless of race, color, creed, national origin. Marry whoever you want. But in 1967, a black man and a white woman, or vice versa, could not get married. Especially in some of the southern states, it was against the law. And I'm not going to go through the rest of them, but if you really want to read notable events, Google the same thing. What movie won the Academy Award for Best Picture? And then who won the Best Actor and Best Actress? So Paul Scofield for a movie called A Man for All Seasons, and Katharine Hepburn won Best Actress for Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. If you haven't seen that movie, it's a very, very good movie, which leads up to what were a few popular movies that came out that year. Guess Who's Coming to Dinner was a very popular movie. Wait Until Dark, whatever that was. In Cold Blood, which is actually a true story. And my favorite, The Dirty Dozen, which was a World War II movie. I wound up seeing that when I was a kid. What song was on the top of the Billboard charts? To Sir with Love by Lulu. Isn't that coincidence? We had a dog named Lulu, and that was who sang To Sir with Love in 1967. Who was the leader of the country? Lyndon Johnson was president in 1967. And what were a few popular television shows? Bewitched, about a woman who was a witch, and she married Darren. I think his name was Darren, and all of the antics that go along. Star Trek, the original Star Trek, James T. Kirk, Captain Sulu, Mr. Scotty. Sir, I can't give him more power. That was in 1967. Hogan's Heroes. That was a funny show. I remember watching reruns of that when I was a kid. The Monkees. Hey, hey, we're the Monkees. People say we monkey around. We're too fancy or busy singing to put anybody down. Sometimes it'd be crazy. So that was fun, the Monkees. Gunsmoke. Dad loved to watch Gunsmoke. It was a Western. The Lucy Show. I don't think I ever watched. I watched I Love Lucy, but the Lucy Show came after the original I Love Lucy. Lost in Space. Danger, Will Robinson. Danger. So the original show came out in 1967. I remember watching reruns growing up when I was a kid. And Gomer Pyle, USMC. What did he say? Well, golly, he used to say, the guy who was a main character. I found this interesting. What were the prices of the following items in 1967? A loaf of bread was 22 to 25 cents. A gallon of milk was 34 cents. A cup of coffee, 38 cents. A dozen eggs, 53 cents. And now, interesting thing about a dozen eggs, we did not buy eggs from the grocery store. Where I lived on Thompson Street, go out my house, go down the street, hang a left on Franklin, hang a right on Foster Street, and on the left-hand side there was what was called Haven's Eggs. They were, what do you call, it was like they raised chickens, and they had, a big like chicken barn or building, whatever it was, and tons of chickens in there. And you'd walk in the little store, and there'd be the wife, whatever, Mrs. Haven, would be sitting there, and they had the machine that would rotate the eggs in front of like a candle. It wasn't a candle, but it was a light. And they would check to make sure that there was no embryo, inside the egg. So we used to buy our eggs fresh from Haven's Eggs Market, or Haven's Eggs Eggery place that was right around the corner. And I just always remember my mom, giving me 50 cents, go get a dozen eggs, walk down there and get them. The average cost of a new home was $14,250. And I think my parents paid around $13,000 for the house that I grew up in. A first class stamp was 5 cents. Imagine that. A new car was average at $725. Adjusted for inflation, that would be $15,155 today would be the average price. A gallon of gas, 33 cents a gallon. Could you imagine? And a movie ticket was $1.20 to go to the movies. Let's see. Okay, that's all I have for this video of what happened the year you were born. On our next installment, I'm going to be going and talking about growing up. So more about my growing up and childhood and stuff like that. And yeah, we'll see what we can do. Thank you for watching. Have a wonderful day. Talk to you later. Bye.